you got to realize that whatever you're doing, you're competing with somebody. What is it that gives you an advantage over your competition? Whatever you're good at, try to be great at it. And if you're great at it, good things will happen.
Maverick Podcast.
I'm far from average. That's why I had to come sit down and chop it up with DJ Maverick. They know my name from coast to coast and even in Dallas. I use my talent when I'm faced with a challenge. Gratitude strength is my magnet. Close your eyes and imagine. If you can see it in your mind, then you can have it.
Maverick Podcast.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us. This is a Maverick Podcast. I'm your host, DJ Maverick. Today we have another rock star in the building. We have award-winning young adult fantasy author, the one and only Julie Caldwell. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Great to be here.
For the 1% of the people out there that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like you said, I'm an award-winning young adult fantasy author. Have market myself on TikTok with almost 2.3 thousand followers.
Congrats.
Thank you. I wrote 2 books of Witches in Ruin and of War of Magic, both out now, and I'm working on another 4-book series.
Very cool. So growing up, were you always into writing, into reading? Like, what was the passion?
When I was a really young kid, my mom used to read me to sleep, and she used to do little voices, which got me into reading. Mm-hmm. And then when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, I got really into the Percy Jackson series. And I credit that series and the author Rick Riordan on me becoming a really big bookworm and wanting to be an author.
That's a great segue, because I was going to ask you, you being an author, if you close your eyes, can you picture like each of the characters' voice and what they sound like?
Sort of.
Yeah.
I'm a really visual person. So while yes, I can like visualize like the inflections of the voices and the dialogue and the narrative.
Yeah.
I actually make my characters in The Sims just to like have a visual of what they look like.
No way.
Yeah.
Okay. That's super unique. I've never heard about that process. Tell me about that.
Basically I download free custom content and like hairs and clothes and stuff and just make them in the character creator.
I was talking about your website before we started.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed is that you have the characters there and you give a description and what they look like. Is that how you generate that kind of stuff? Or
Yes.
What? Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. What made you think of that? Like, you're just like, hey, I just want to put some visuals behind these guys, or what?
Yeah. I really like the way The Sims art is, and kind of like I said, I'm a very visual person.
Yeah.
So I wanted to have some character art, and I couldn't afford to commission it at first. So I just made the characters in The Sims.
Okay. How did you figure out that fantasy was your jam? Like, how did you decide, hey, this is the type of genre I'm interested in?
It's what I've always read.
Okay.
Like I said, I've read the Percy Jackson series since I was a kid. And from there, it kind of spiraled to Vampire Academy and Twilight and all of that fantasy stuff. So
would you say it's more challenging than a traditional book? Because a traditional book, maybe you just have to develop the characters. But with fantasy, you have to develop the world, the rules of the world, and then the characters on top of that, right?
yes, it is a little bit more difficult. I would say with like a traditional book, you do still have to develop the world a little bit. Because it's not going to be exactly like this world unless you're writing nonfiction. Yeah. But with fantasy, it is a little bit more difficult, but I would also say it's a little bit easier because you get to make up your own rules. It's not, it's grounded in reality, but not.
Okay. That's interesting. I just wondered like what the process is from going to draft to like, okay, this is finished. Because if I'm going to develop a world, where do you stop? Like, it's like endless, right?
My world building process starts with the characters because characters drive the plot. And then I think back to what motivates these characters, and we all have motivations from our religious experiences to our family upbringing to everything surrounding that. So I go back and I try to think, where did they get this motivation? Where did they get this personality?
Got it. So indie writer, personal branding, huge. I saw that you're big on TikTok.
Yes.
Right. TikTok right now is all over the news, potential ban.
Yes.
What do you feel? Like, what do you think about that?
I'm very disappointed.
Mhm.
I did listen to the Supreme Court briefing, and while I don't know what's going to happen, I'm very disappointed that it got to this,
Yeah.
because I mean 170 million Americans use it.
Mhm.
I think 4 million small businesses
No way.
got their start on TikTok
Yeah.
and make their income off of it.
Mhm.
I market my books that way. That is how I get most of my book sales.
Okay.
So having that potentially go away for so many people
Mhm.
is just a huge detriment
Yeah, for
to
sure.
not only, freedom of speech, and we can get into that or not, but like just for creatives.
Yeah.
Because TikTok is very unique in the fact that it allows creatives to find their people, find their community. And there's going to be nothing else like it.
Yeah, that's an important point because you're right. One of the things I like about TikTok is the algorithm.
Mhm.
Your success on the platform isn't predicated on the number of followers you have, right?
Yeah.
It could just be like, hey, this video, they keep engaging with it. We're going to start feeding it to the For You page, right?
Exactly.
A lot of the other social media platforms, it's like, okay, how many followers, how many likes, right? That plays a big part. So when you were developing your community in TikTok, how did you go about that? Was it just like organic, or how did you go about that?
I really like to have an organic following. I've been working for 2.5, maybe 3 years building it up.
Huh.
Because I've never gone viral.
Yeah.
So I don't have that immediate overnight success, thousands of people following just for that one video. I built my following organically by being me.
Mhm.
And I find that to be the most important thing when I'm doing social media,
Yeah.
is to be authentic.
And you've tried some of the others like IG, YouTube.
Yes.
You just don't vibe as well, or what do you think?
I don't vibe as well.
Yeah.
Instagram, I don't find that I can be authentically me because it's mostly image based.
Yeah.
And YouTube, I've always had a hard time making long form content. Don't know why, but
Yeah.
TikTok is just my vibe.
Okay. You go live. I see a lot of people go live on TikTok.
I used to go live a lot. I don't as much anymore,
Mhm.
just because I don't have that huge chunk of time that it would take to go live.
You also have your own website, right?
Mhm, yes.
Oftentimes with creatives, musicians, you name it, they're just like on social media and they don't have a landing page, right? So great example, let's say TikTok goes away. Where do people find you, right? So I was glad to see you're building a website and also doing some unique things. We were talking about you have Spotify playlists
Yes.
for your books. So tell me about that.
Basically, I have to have music whenever I write. So I build a playlist to fit the vibe of the book, the main character, and I love to put those playlists like in the back of the books. And
Oh, they're in the books as well.
yes, they are.
Okay.
And then they are on the website when you go to the books page.
Yeah.
Because I find it is unique, and a lot of younger readers like that interaction.
Things. So if you're putting it in the books, do you also say like maybe this chapter or this scene, play this song?
Oh, but
No?
that's a good idea.
I'm already thinking about that, right?
Yes.
Like, hey, this is maybe the soundtrack of like this epic moment that's going to happen or something like
Yes.
that.
Ooh, you just
might-
gave me an idea.
That might be kind of interesting because I'm a big fan of music. So
Mhm.
when I saw that, I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I thought that was cool.
Thank you.
So congrats on that. I'm glad to see that you're building out your website, doing new things.
Mhm.
Like if people, let's say TikTok goes away, where would you tell people to continue to build that community, right?
Right now, I'm directing people to my other socials, but I'm also directing them to my newsletter.
Okay.
Because I find that is the most stable place
For sure.
where you can keep up with everything that I do.
You own it. right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is exactly right. No social media company or government can take that away. So
That's great. You're checking all my boxes. Usually, like when people, I'm like, hey, you got to build a newsletter, you got to do these things. How did you become savvy of doing those things? You have a business background?
I went to school for photography and they taught us some of the business of it. And I just took some of that and kind of merged it into the writing.
Tell me about your first book experience. Like, what was the first book that you wrote? What was that like?
It was Of Witches and Ruin.
Okay.
So that was my debut novel. It came out July of 2023 and it was amazing. I didn't even think that I could publish a novel.
Yeah.
And, I went onto TikTok and was just like, I need help finding an editor.
So that's how you went
That
on
is
TikTok
yes.
and learned everything?
Yes,
Yeah,
that
'cause
is.
I wouldn't know where to start. So, like, walk me through that.
I didn't know where to start either. So I did know I needed an editor first and foremost to make, the prose and everything good. So I went onto TikTok, I asked for help, found an amazing editor, love her.
Mhm.
And, she helped me edit the book. And then it was kind of just like a step-by-step of learning as I go.
Okay.
And mostly Google.
Yeah.
I mostly Googled it. I
Yeah.
used Kindlepreneur and a couple of other websites for self-publishing. And I was just like, okay, what do I need to do next
Mhm.
after the editing? Okay, well, it's formatting, making the inside of the book look pretty. And then it's cover design. And then it is marketing the book before launch.
Got it. I'm super curious. So explain it to me like I'm 5. What are the phases of writing a book? You mentioned the editor. Like, where does that come? Like, what are the phases?
So the phases are the first draft, which is like the rough draft, draft 0. It's like getting the story on the page
Mhm.
to yourself so you can make it pretty later. And then after that is done, you go to self edits, which is you editing the book by yourself, making it what you want it to be, the best you can get it. And then it is professional editing.
Mhm.
And after that, depending on what editor you get, there are 3 types: developmental, line, and copy editor. And developmental editor helps with story structure and character development.
Mhm.
And line and copy do the nitty-gritty work of sentence structure and spelling.
Okay.
And then after that, you do the formatting, which again is making the inside look pretty like a book.
Mhm.
And you can do like pictures in the book. Like I have chapter headings, like pictures, and it's really, I love designing them. I designed them myself. And then it is cover design once you have the final page count from formatting.
Okay.
And then you get an ISBN, which
is
it is. An ISBN is the number on the back of the book that every book has. It's like the number on top of the barcode.
Okay.
That is the ISBN. And after you get the ISBN, then you can submit it to a print-on-demand company, which is like Ingram Spark or Draft Digital.
What was the feedback when you started telling, whether it be friends or family, hey, I want to be an author? Did they think you were crazy? Were they receptive?
My mother was on board 100%. So was my best friend, Cal. I have found that some of the people in my life were not as happy that I was going to publish a book.
Yeah.
And, that happens.
Tough to make it as an author, or what was the feedback?
It was, I had a friend and they wanted to be an author too. So they were kind of jealous that I did it first.
God.
So, I mean, it happens.
Yeah.
But most of the people in my life were really supportive.
Mm-hmm.
And, again, my mother was 100% on
It's
board.
amazing. Shout out to mom.
Yeah.
That's cool. So first experience, was it super positive or was it
Super
like
positive,
bumps in the
yes.
road or what?
There was one bump in the road where I let my cover designer know the wrong page count, but it got fixed pretty easily. Other than that, for my first book, it went pretty smooth.
Really?
Yes.
To me, there's a lot of moving pieces and then a lot of third party,
Mhm.
right? So
Yes.
how do you make sure that your vision stays consistent throughout the whole process? Because it has to be a whole package. Right?
Yes. So, how I made sure it stayed consistent was I did most everything myself. I worked with the cover designer. They sent me an idea, and I was just like, hey, can we tone down the warm colors? Can we
Yeah.
make it a little bit brighter with poppy contrast?
Mhm.
And, I got what I wanted out of my book. So, with a lot of traditional publishing, a lot of traditionally published authors can work with their editor and their cover designer.
Mhm.
But I have also heard that a lot of the control is out of your hands.
Okay.
So I knew I wanted to self-publish because I wanted all of that control to be
Yeah.
in my hands because it is my art.
Mhm. 1000%. So this first book, was it standalone or was it a series?
It was going to be a duology,
Yeah?
always, yes.
Okay. And then I saw on your website there's others that are like series, right? So
Yes.
walk me through that. Like what are some of those books and like maybe a brief summary?
So I am working on my third book. It is the first book in a new 4-book series called Ravens Cove Academy Chronicles. Book 1 is set to be released spring, summer of this year, 2025. And I'm super excited. It is a dark academia, young adult fantasy with kind of like secret society vibes and town secrets. And this girl is trying to figure out, who she can trust, who she can't,
Okay.
and just kind of find her way through high school, as well as all of this other very dark, mysterious stuff.
What does that mean? Dark.
It is basically kind of like boarding school vibes
Okay.
with very muted colors and kind of like, again, secret society, like secrets, murder, mystery, all of that stuff
Okay.
wrapped into one. And I love it because it does have that mysterious vibe, and you can do a lot with a boarding school setting.
For sure. Yeah. Once again, you're building out like the whole world
Yes.
along with the characters, right?
Mhm.
So maybe walk me through your inspiration and your process. Like, how do you go about it? It's just like it hits you all of a sudden, or what?
It sometimes does hit me all of a sudden. Mostly it hits me when I'm half asleep. And
No way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Inspiration, story ideas hit me when I'm like half asleep and I have to grab my phone off its charger and I'm just like, I have to wake up and put this down or I'm going to forget it.
Yeah. What do you use for that? Do you use a traditional notebook or your phone?
My
or
phone.
Your phone?
My notes app
Okay. The other one is War and Magic. Is that
of
right?
War and Magic.
Okay,
Yes.
tell me about that one.
It is the sequel to Of Witches and Ruin. It is the conclusion to the duology.
Mhm.
And it is darker and grittier than the first book, but still very YA friendly.
Yeah.
So I like Of War and Magic just a little bit better than the first one
Mhm.
because I got to explore what it would have been like to have your home destroyed.
Yeah.
And how do you cope with that?
How did you discover that you were good at writing? And it's like, to me, it's like, how do you know, right?
Yeah, I've always kind of been interested in writing. I actually had a poem published when I was 10. A horrible poem.
That's amazing though. How did it get published?
I went onto this website called poetry.com, I believe it was. I don't know if it's still around.
Yeah.
But they published it in an anthology. And it, again, horrible poem. I was 10 years old.
Yeah.
But I loved writing from then. And the interesting thing is I met up with an old teacher of mine pretty recently, and she told me that a friend of hers, who was my high school English teacher, told her that she always knew I was going to be a writer.
No way.
In high school, over 10 years ago, don't want to date myself, but and it was just the most like eye-opening thing because I didn't know I was going to be a writer back then.
Yeah.
And someone else saw it.
Did your parents know that you submitted that as
Yes.
a 10-year-old or what? I'm just imagining like you just logging in like as a 10-year-old.
Yes. Only when they wanted to publish it.
Okay.
But I sent it in myself.
Very cool. And your parents were like, yeah, for sure. Why not?
Yeah.
That's super cool. So being indie means you have to wear multiple hats, right? Like
Yes.
you have to do the business side, marketing side, creative, you name it. How do you go about wearing multiple hats like that?
It is hard. I have had trouble with it in the past. I've gotten a little bit more organized now, but yeah, it's hard trying to juggle actually writing a book and then doing like the boring stuff like taxes and then juggling the marketing, like filming content, planning content, keeping up with trends. And it's stressful, and I love that stress, but it can be difficult trying to manage everything.
Yeah. If you had a choice, would you let that side go and just focus on writing, or you think you want to be hands-on with everything?
I want to be hands-on.
Yeah.
For the entire process.
Really?
I love it. I wouldn't be doing anything else.
Yeah.
Like I said, I love that stress.
Yeah. That's amazing. Stereotypical, author you always think about. They're like, hey, I don't want to talk to anybody. Like, I'm just like too good or whatever. But do you enjoy meeting the readers and doing public signings and stuff like that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Meeting readers is probably the best part of the job because when I was younger and I was reading, I felt like I was with the characters, that those stories got me through tough times. And meeting readers and seeing how my books have impacted them is the just epitome of happiness for me.
Does something stand out, like a memorable time when you met somebody, like how the book impacted them? You have a story like that?
I actually have met a reader who lived not far from me. So she came and picked up the book and was just like, I absolutely adore this. This is my favorite book. And it was like, it made my heart so warm. Like, oh my gosh.
Super cool. Because
Yeah.
just imagine you as a kid, and I don't know who your favorite author was as a kid, but imagine they always say, don't meet your idols, right? So imagine if you would have met them and they were a jerk, right?
Yes.
So like, to me, it's like super important to be sort of like mindful of that. Like, hey, I do want to meet people. I do want to engage, and I enjoy that, right?
Yeah.
So what would you say to people that maybe they don't enjoy the social media aspect or the people aspect of it? Can you still be a successful writer?
I think yes. You can still be a successful writer even if you don't have social media because, like as we're seeing with TikTok, it's not permanent. And people have been marketing books way beyond social media, way before social media. And I mean, there's ways to do it. I mean, you can go to craft shows and you can go to, your local library and say, hey, I'm an author, set up an event. And if you don't like that aspect of like social media and kind of marketing in general, you can get away without doing it with social media, but you have to market your books somehow. Right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're indie, because traditional publishing houses have marketing teams that they pay to market your books.
Yeah.
Indies don't have that. We have to do it all ourselves. We have to do all of the legwork. And a lot of traditionally published authors also have to do legwork, but they also have a marketing team behind them.
Got it. So these modern publishing houses, do they pay attention to your social media before they decide to work with you or not? Like, is that a factor?
I don't think it should be. I'm not very well versed on the traditional side of it because I've always wanted to self-publish. But I'm pretty sure that they don't look at your following count. And if they do, they really shouldn't.
Okay, that's interesting because on the music side of things, I keep hearing that record labels do care about that. So they're like, how many followers do you have? How many streams do you have? All those numbers are playing a factor nowadays.
I will say having a large following does help with marketing and selling books, but it is not the end all be all because clicks and views don't translate always into book sales.
Tell me about the first time that you got the book and it's tangible and you're like, this thing like came into fruition. What does that feel like, right?
I cried.
You cried?
I cried. It was surreal to say the least. I got the proof copy of of Witches in Ruin, my very first book, and I held it in my hands and I thought, I did it.
Yeah.
I published a book.
It's amazing. It's probably like a singer, like the first time you hear your song on the radio or something like that, right? Like
Yes.
you get the book in your hand and you're like, this is it. Like I'm an author, right?
Yeah.
That's super cool. Did you like give it out to friends or did your friends even know that you were doing it?
Oh, my
or?
friends knew. I told them when I was writing the book.
Okay. What keeps you motivated and inspired to continue to be an author? You just love it or what?
I love it. I love creating characters. I love creating worlds. Mostly what keeps me inspired to keep writing what I do is, again, when I was a child, I got through some hard times reading books.
Yeah.
And I want to make my stories the type of stories that kids can read and know that they have that strength, that courage, that resilience inside them, no matter what is happening in their life, no matter what is happening at home, at school, that they can get through it.
Yeah. So would you describe your books like all ages or is there like a target audience for your books or what?
My target audience is young adults, 13 to 18 years old. But over half of YA readers are ages 30 to 44.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Which, I mean, that just speaks to the universal aspect of young adult and people wanting to kind of go back into that nostalgic escapism, but also like newer readers have that story of characters their age.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on like something tangible, physical versus like on a Kindle? Like, how do you feel that as an author? I think to me, there's something to be said about feeling the pages, smelling the ink, right? Turning the page. You tell me how you feel.
I love the smell of books. I'm a weirdo for that.
Me too. The library is like one of the like
Yes.
that and like fresh rain or something like
Yes.
that, right?
But I mean, a lot of people don't have time to, sit down and read a physical book. So keeping a Kindle with them is, easier, or an audiobook. And some people, find it more accessible to read a Kindle or an audiobook where you can change the font, the sizing, you can read along as you hear it. So I don't think it's really a good comparison of like which is better.
Okay.
Because they're all reading and we all have different abilities and wants in a book. So like me, I'm obsessed with hardbacks.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Obsessed. But a lot of people prefer paperbacks. So it's kind of just personal preference.
One of the interesting things that I ran across is that you're currently auditioning for an audiobook, right?
Yeah.
So walk me through that process. How do you go about that?
So the process of finding an audiobook is I'm going through Audible's audiobook site, ACX, and I'm doing royalty share, which is I don't pay anything up front, but the narrator and I share royalties.
Yeah.
So the process of that is I put together an audition script of a few snippets from the book and the synopsis of the book and maybe some character profiles. And I put that on the website and people can audition with those snippets. And I go through and I pick the narrator. And then it is just us kind of vibing together and creating the audiobook.
How does that process work? Do they just read a page or a whole chapter? Like, how do you get like, okay, vibe check, like good?
Yeah, it is definitely a vibe check. I take random snippets of the whole book, maybe 3 to 4. And, you know, I try to get as many different character voices in there as possible, as many different scenes and emotions. And I put it in a PDF and I put it on the website. And then I kind of listen to the auditions and pick the voice that fits my character the best.
Okay. And then once they deliver the whole project, do you listen to the whole thing? Do you get an edit afterwards? Or it's like once it's the whole thing, it's like a finished product?
So there's this thing on ACX called the first 15. And it's basically the first 15 minutes of the book. So after you approve that, it is up to the narrator to finish the rest of the book and have their side kind of edit it and send it back to you fully finished.
Okay.
And then you get to say, yes, this is great. No, I need you to re-record some of these parts. And once you approve it, it goes through quality control and then it is on Audible.
I think I read recently where Spotify was going to have audiobooks as well.
Yes,
right?
they do.
Yeah. So is that a platform you're also going to explore or what?
I would love to do that. Unfortunately, when you do royalty share through ACX, it is exclusive to Audible.
Okay.
So I would love to do that in the future, but producing an audiobook is expensive.
Yeah. What about illustrations? Do you have illustrations inside the books or?
I'm going to have some illustrations in this next series. This series that I have, the Of Witches and Ruin duology, does not have any illustrations, simply because, you know, it was my first series and I was trying to do it on a shoestring budget.
When you're feeling inspired, where do you go to write? Could it be anywhere or do you have to like drink a certain coffee or tea or like, what's that process like?
I have a home office and I have this whole cozy setup. Like, I don't turn on the overhead light. I have like LEDs set to like orange and I have like this flame bulb. It's like an electric light bulb that flickers, and I have like this moonlight, and like I have 3 drinks at least.
3 drinks.
3 drinks.
What are the 3 drinks? Tell me about that.
I have to have a bottle of plain water,
Okay.
a bottle of flavored water when I get tired of the plain water, and then I have to have some sort of caffeine.
Okay.
And then like I have to have like my clicky clacky keyboard and my writing software all set up.
Yeah.
So I can write anywhere.
To me, that sounds like you've got it dialed in.
Yeah.
like this is where I'm going to be creative and you know exactly what you need to get those juices flowing.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Like I can write anywhere, but I prefer to write in my office.
So that's interesting. 3 drinks. If you could share a drink with any of your characters, who would it be with and what would you guys talk about?
Considering most of my characters are under 21.
Oh, no. Well, it could be water. It could be whatever, right? A tea. Are you coffee or a tea person?
I am a tea person.
Okay.
My character, Ebony, is a coffee drinker.
Okay.
So if I could share a drink with anyone, it would be her, because I want to know, like, how strong she can take her coffee.
To me, when you're developing the characters, right, like you have a vision set of what they should look like, what they should sound like. Like, how do you go about developing the characters? What are the key things that you have to make a character complete?
The main thing I have to have is kind of their want and then their need. So if you think about it in terms of real life people, you can want to have $1 million, but what you need is to be secure in finances. So that's pretty much how I view making characters is they have this want and then they have this need that they don't know about. But once they get it, they're like, oh, yeah, I no longer want this thing because I have what I need.
Okay. Do these characters have like powers? Do they have like, you have to develop that side too?
Yeah,
or what?
yeah. In Of Witches in Ruin and of War of Magic, Ebony is a witch who has powers. She comes from this magical realm called Amethystia, and she has powers. She comes from 2 very powerful bloodlines, and it is developing that side. And I have other characters with powers, so it's developing their powers that are different to my main characters with different backgrounds and everything. And I like it.
I think I saw where that was the name of your cat. Is that right? Like, tell me about that. I think I saw like somewhere on your website. I forget where I saw it, where you're like, okay, this is.
So my cat's name is Absinthe, like the drink. I wanted something Halloween-y because she is pure black. She is also a very spicy kitty. Will not let me pet her. She will hiss and scratch, but she is also the sweetest thing because she will come into my room and sleep right next to me.
Okay.
So I think Absinthe is like the perfect name for her because she's spicy. Like, she can be sweet.
Yeah, I ran across that and I was like, that's cool. Like you even get like a little like preview into like her pets. Like it seems like you're cool with like sharing your personal life and stuff like that, right? Like
yeah. And that is one thing that I have really strived for on social media is you see a lot of these people with like internet personalities and like these characters that are exaggerated versions of themselves.
Yeah.
I have always strived to be authentically me on social media.
Yeah, because then it's difficult, right? Like you have to pretend to be this person. You're really not, right? So.
And it kind of, at least when I was growing up, I grew up with like the OG YouTube, like Fred. And I loved Fred as a kid. But it was this character that I couldn't relate to because it was this exaggerated personality. So when I think of doing social media and, you know, being this, being on the internet in general, I want to be authentic to who I am as a real life person because I feel like younger people need to know that it is okay to be themselves.
To me, it feels like you're big on community.
Yes.
You're big on meeting the people. So I don't know if you've done this or not, but have you explored maybe setting up a tour, various cities or cool locations and like meeting people, almost like a band would?
I would love to travel to different cities. I would love to meet people in different states, and my books have gone to a lot of different states, so I would love to go there. Finance wise, it's not very feasible for me right now. But I am setting up local signings.
Okay.
And I'm actually trying to set up one right now. It's going to be sometime in the spring.
Cool.
So,
have you done that before? Have you done some signings?
Yes, I've done one other signing in December of 2023. So I loved it. The energy, the vibe, the meeting people.
Yeah.
It was great.
All right. So tell me about growing up in Mass. What was that? Was it Boston or where did you grow up? Or
I didn't grow up in Massachusetts. I lived there for a year. That was where I went to school for photography. It was magical. My books are actually set in Salem, Massachusetts, because I used to go there every weekend.
I wanted to ask you because me thinking about the tour, if you think about like some of those places that have like traditional, like maybe witch or whatever stories, it might be a cool setting, right, for one of those signings, right?
Oh, it would be. I would love to do a signing in Salem.
You went there for photography, though.
Yes.
Yeah. Why there for photography?
there was a school there. I was looking for photography schools when I was in high school, about to graduate, and they called me up and wanted me to apply. And so I did, and it was all the way in Western Massachusetts, rural Western Massachusetts, and I absolutely loved it. The fall foliage was so beautiful. And we got so much snow that winter. I remember doing photo shoots in like knee-high snow.
No way.
Yeah, and like 20 degrees. It
Yeah.
was wild.
Yeah.
But I loved it.
So would you say that part kind of your life molded you into the person you are today?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I found out I loved kind of being in nature, in that kind of setting. I loved being in New England. I visited Boston. I went to Manhattan. It was amazing. And we did field trips to like these small towns in like New Hampshire and Vermont, and the historic buildings and the small town vibe. Loved it. That's why I set the book in the small town of Salem, because I loved the vibes there. And Salem has such a history with witches.
Yeah.
So.
Maybe tell me a little bit for the viewers out there that may not be familiar with that history. Like, what's the history behind Salem and witches?
Salem was the site for the 1662 witch trials. A lot of the witches in Salem were hanged as versus burned at the stake. That was more in Europe. And it was a very dark time in not only Salem's history, but America's history, because a lot of these people were innocent.
Yeah.
There was a test of, I get the details wrong all the time, but it was, they would put an accused witch in water, and if they drowned, they were innocent, and if they stayed alive, they were a witch and they were hanged.
Wait. If you're drowned, you're innocent, but then you're drowned. So
Yeah.
the logic there is kind of crazy to me.
I know.
Yeah.
It was mass hysteria.
Yeah. Wow. So if you go there, you're able to go to some of the buildings, or
Yes.
what kind of memorabilia or what kind of historic landmarks are there?
Oh gosh. There is the old cemetery where the judges for the Salem witch trials are buried. There is the one and only standing building from the witch trials. I think it was a judge's house.
Okay.
But it was tiny. It's now a museum. It was
Yeah.
so tiny, like I had to like duck into
That's
the doorways.
crazy. So I'm curious also hearing about your photography side. Is that something that you've kept alive or what?
I would love to do more photography. Unfortunately, I got diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder, and so I'm trying to figure that out.
Okay.
It has put a hindrance in my photography,
Yeah.
definitely.
Did you do more of the film, like traditional photography?
I
or
did digital.
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 Okay.
My focus was cosplay photography.
Okay.
So-
Interesting.
Yeah.
So how do you go about that? Do you like sort of recruit models or themes? You set up shoots? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, you can. I did it in a kind of different way. I worked for an anime convention.
Okay.
So I got to meet a lot of cosplayers through that, and we set up photo shoots, and it was really cool. And that's kind of how I knew I was into storytelling in the first place, was, wedding photography, baby photography. It wasn't my speed. It was these fantastical storytelling elements.
Where do you see writing and maybe an author's journey going 5 to 10 years from now, right? Technology keeps evolving. What do you think that looks like for future authors?
I think it is going to look somewhat similar to now. I mean, we have the big debate about AI.
Yeah. Are you a fan or not?
Not.
Not. Positively,
100% not.
Oh, wow.
I do think AI has its uses in like science and technology and the medical arts, but it has no place in the creative field. Art is made by humans.
Yeah.
It is how humans express ourselves. It is how humans communicate throughout the ages. I mean, take a look at ancient Greece and the pottery that has lasted thousands of years. Think of the Mona Lisa and Van Gogh's Starry Night. Like, these are pieces of a artist's life that have survived time.
They have a soul, right?
Yes.
Like you can look at the art and you can say, okay, this was made by a human.
Exactly.
Right?
And when you take the human out of art, it becomes something just like soulless, like you said.
So to play devil's advocate, what if you're using AI as a tool and you're like, okay, this is going to revise my draft, or maybe it's going to give me some points of edits or something like that. What do you think about that?
I do use AI in that way, but there is a difference between using AI as a tool to help you refine your writing
For sure.
and using it as a tool to write a book, right? You can't just plug a prompt into ChatGPT
Just
and
like spit it all out.
yes, that's the kind of thing that just really irks me is people do that and then try and make money off of it. But when you take the time to actually write the book and create everything yourself, I find AI in like Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid can be very useful if used in the right way.
Yeah. What about the metaverse? I'm always curious about the metaverse because to me, I could see where humanity might move to where they're truly only living in the metaverse. Like if, you know, sometimes you even see that with kids now where they value more of like, I'm going to upgrade my character in this online video game versus I want this physical toy, right? So what do you think about the metaverse? And are you a fan? I don't know if you play video games.
I play video games. I don't do the metaverse. I'm more of a single player story kind of video gamer. There's a place for it. I don't think we should be focusing all of our time on it because, well, from what I understand, the metaverse is like multiplayer. You can interact with people, right? So while there is a community there and there, you know, I have online friends all the time. And I would caution people to spend their life in it. Because while you can find really good friends online, it's not a replacement for real human interaction.
Yeah. To me, just when I start to think about that, because people are like buying real estate in the metaverse.
Gosh.
And it's like crazy money. So it's
Didn't know that.
Yeah, for sure. Like with NFTs, people are buying real estate in the metaverse and they're paying like crazy money to be the neighbor of this celebrity or whatever in the metaverse. It's pretty crazy.
Metaverse is what, VR? Because once you take that headset off, I mean, you're in reality.
Yeah.
And again, there's something to be said for having a community in like a VR space because you can interact with them. But I find if you do that all the time, you kind of lose that person to person.
Sure.
Like
that can't be replicated.
Exactly.
Right? Like that human experience, sharing a cup of tea, a cup of coffee with somebody.
Exactly.
Way different than being in the metaverse.
Yes.
Right.
Way different.
Yeah. Where can people find you? Maybe like a brief summary of like the worlds that you're creating, the series that are about to come out. Like go ahead and plug in whatever you got.
All right. Well, people can find me on TikTok for now, Threads, Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky. You can sign up for my newsletter. If you go to my website, juliecaldwell.com, there is a box where you can sign up for my newsletter. And the cool thing about that is if you just want to experience my writing, you can download the first chapter for Of Witches and Ruin for free if you do that. So you can also find me on YouTube. My series, Raven's Cove Academy Chronicles, book 1 releases in a few months or whenever I get the timelines right.
Amazing. I wanted to ask you, one of the things I saw was the Next Gen Under 30.
Yes.
Right? So tell me about that award. What are the qualifications? And of course, congrats on winning that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, basically a friend of mine nominated me for the award, and the application process was I had to write like an about me of where I wanted my career to go and how I was going to help, the community of Oklahoma. And I saw my name on the list of winners and I couldn't believe it. I screenshotted it. I sent it to my friend. I was like, am I saying what I'm saying? But Next Gen Under 30 encourages innovative leaders to help their community and stay in Oklahoma as business owners. So when I won, I kind of won it on the platform of like, I would love to go around to high school and middle schools and teach kids about writing and how that can help you. And it was a once in a lifetime, just amazing experience.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like it could be a diverse list, right? So
yes.
you could have writers, probably entrepreneurs.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of do you remember some of your classmates that were awarded? Like what kind of backgrounds are we talking about?
I think Miss Oklahoma was at the awards ceremony.
Oh, wow.
So she was a recipient, and a lot of them were with kind of like social work and public education. And there were a few like me in the arts, and it was just this really diverse group of people who, are doing so much for the community and for their own businesses.
I've definitely enjoyed the conversation. Always welcome back. So anytime you're about to have a signing or whatever, book release party, I don't know, you tell me. To me, like you have so many opportunities. It's only like your imagination is what's limiting to you, right?
Sky's the limit.
With the world we live in today, I think it's super cool. Just all the tools we have at our disposal. Yeah. And you're living proof of that. So congrats.
Thank you.
All right. There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, super talented Julie Caldwell on the Maverick Podcast. In dreams, we trust.